Hi there, welcome to episode 1 of Clueless Cuisine, Noms on a Budget, where I will show you, yes you, that's you who do not know how to cook, how to make delicious noms. For our very first recipe, I've decided that making a nacho cheese dip for dinner would be pretty tasty. So what you're looking at is a list of everything we're going to need to make this meal. It looks like a lot. Don't be afraid. It's stupidly easy, and I'm going to show you how. So let's get started. I'll go over the ingredients first. As I mentioned in the basics episode, I'm a big fan of spices, so you'll usually see a big pile of spices when I make food, and I'll show you each and every one of them. Minced garlic is one of my absolute favorite things to cook with. Minced garlic. I cannot get enough of this stuff. I'm a big fan of garlic, and I'm a big fan of spicy food, so you're going to see a lot of those things in my meals. Okay, so minced garlic, cumin seed, which is, it's not really seed, it's just powder, but cumin seed, black pepper, just regular old table pepper, garlic powder along with this, chili powder, and then these two are to taste because I like spicy food, but I know a lot of people don't. So these two are optional. Tabasco sauce and ground red pepper, which is super spicy. It's like fire in a bottle. All right, and the next things we're gonna need are, you're gonna need a packet of taco seasoning, and it doesn't matter what kind you choose. You can get reduced sodium or regular, or mild or spicy or normal or super fancy, whatever you choose. You're going to need a pound of ground beef. I use, when you go to buy ground beef, there are different prices for different qualities. There's, I think, you can see right here that there's a percent on here. It says 80% lean, 20% fat, and it means just that. There's 80% lean meat and 20% of fat in this package. This is, I guess, kind of the mid-range of meats. There is a higher quality one, and there are lower quality ones. I like this one because personally, I think that if you get one with less fat than this, it makes it kind of dry, and I don't know, to me it's just not my favorite. But so there are healthier ones. You can use whichever one you like, but 80-20 is what I will be using. You'll also need a block of fake cheese, and this is just like the store brand Velveeta, which is fine. You can use regular Velveeta or the store brand, whatever. You'll notice that I use a lot of Kroger brand stuff when I cook, because that's obviously where we shop. So this is cheddar, and that's what you want. You just want a nice big old block of fake cheddar cheese. You will need salsa, and this one is, there are so many options for this, it's not even funny. I choose to get Premium Selection garden salsa. It's a little different than the jarred stuff because I feel like the jarred stuff is mostly tomato sauce. It bores me to tears. This stuff, it has lots of vegetables, like big chunks of vegetables, lots of herbs, and really tasty sauce. It's not just tomato sauce with the occasional, itty bitty pin-sized piece of pepper or tomato. So there's lots of chunky vegetables in that, and that's what I'll use whenever we make something with salsa. And I highly recommend it. You will need Tostitos chips or tortilla chips. It doesn't matter what brand, it doesn't matter what kind. White corn, yellow corn, wheat, whatever. Just get your favorite tortilla chips, and that'll do you, because you're going to need something to dip this tasty stuff in. You'll need a cutting board. You will need a basic serrated steak knife, which, as I mentioned in the basics episode, I will have you use 2 knives when we cook. You'll be using just a plain old serrated steak knife like this one, and you'll be using a kitchen knife like this one. but we're not using this one for this recipe, so we don't need that. You'll need just a plain old everyday spoon for taste testing, and you will need this later on for scooping out what you cook into a bowl, and you will need this for chopping up and stirring up ingredients while it's cooking. You might not need both of these. We'll see when we get to it. I don't know. Sometimes I use both, sometimes I don't, but we'll see. All right, so there's your list of ingredients. I'll give you a chance to go grab all those, and when you're ready, we will get started making tasty, tasty noms. All right, now that you've got all your stuff together, let's go ahead and get started. So first thing you're gonna need to do is, obviously, you've got your meat here. We need to get out of the package. So this is how I do it. It's got this little metal thing on the end. I just kind of push the plastic back just so I can get right up on it and just saw it open. All right, so now you've got that. That's trash. Set it aside. Now you've got the meat. This is, in my opinion, the easiest way to get open. Just saw straight down the package and pull it open. Okay, so now you've got your meat. Simple, super duper dandy. All right, now that you've got your meat cut open, we're gonna turn on the stove and get started. I like to cook on a really high heat because I don't really have any issues anymore after cooking for so long with burning my food. So I usually cook on high. My stove goes from low to 1 through 9 and then high. So I cook anywhere between high and 9. And I guess if you're super new, I would cook on between 6 and 7. All right, so first thing we're gonna do is we need to get this meat cooking, and I've found what I do is instead of just throwing the whole thing in the pot, what I do, I break off little chunks like this and just toss them in. Don't worry about where they land or if they're all in a pile right now, it doesn't matter. Just get them all separated in chunks and throw it in the pot. All right, so that's that. Wrapper's trash. And now you've got a lovely pot of meat getting started. I'm gonna go wash the oil and slime off my hands. You should do the same. And I'll show you how to chop up this meat, how to ground this up when we return. All right, hands are washed, the meat is cooking. We're doing good so far. Here's what you're gonna have to do. I want you to take your spatula and take your pot. Lift it off the fire because we don't necessarily need it cooking, plus you wanna be able to hear me and all that fun stuff. Scrape everything to one side of the pan, just like this. All right, now here is how I chop meat. I put the spatula up against it just like this. As you can see, the meat's right behind it. I raise it up just a little bit and then push off just a little piece. And I raise it up again, bring it down, push off just a little piece and separate it from the bunch. Raise it up again, chop off just a little piece and push it away from the bunch. And so on and so forth until you've got the entire thing mashed up. So I'm gonna go ahead and do that. You watch me do it, and when that's all finished, we will move on to the next step. As it gets separated up, you're gonna have to keep pushing it back. Just keep pulling it back onto one corner of the pot and then separate it up again. So smash, 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 and then bring it back. Smash, 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 bring it back. And it'll start to brown while you're doing this, which is a good thing because we want it all cooked. So you smash up a little bit of it, and then it spreads out, pull everything back, and start again. And now that it's starting to cook, what I'll also do is take a spoonful, which, just like this, get my spatula all underneath it, and then just roll it over, just like that. That's all you need to do. So now you see how it's all brown right here? So that's what you do. And then, you just keep going. Smash it apart, and then pull everything back to the side. Smash it apart. And then pull it back to the side. Now you're gonna flip it again. Just flip everything you can grab and start again. Now, obviously you're gonna keep doing this until the meat is brown. This is where cooking on a lower heat begins to change things because, as you can see, mine's browning pretty quick. I mean, we've been working for just a few minutes and it's already starting to turn mostly brown. So this will cook pretty quick. Work while it's cooking. Scoop it all to the side and turn it. So obviously keep going with this until all the meat is brown. You want to keep chopping it and keep turning it. The more you chop it, the finer the pieces are going to get, which means the smaller bites you're going to get. That's a good thing. See? We want those little small pieces because that makes for just more even bites when you're spooning out your food to whoever you're feeding. You don't have to worry about Grandma getting a big old chunk of burger meat while Sonny Jim only gets, you know, one spoonful little size. Now, when you're cooking, if you start to get so much steam in your way that you can't really see what you're doing, a little trick is just to blow on it while you're doing your thing. It separates up the steam and you can see. Like so. Alright, so the burger's starting to get nice and brown. That's what we want. It's okay if it's still a little pink, but I'm talking just a little itty bitty bit. You want it to be, I'd say, 98% cooked. Okay? So once you've got it all ground up, it should look like this. You should be able to just shake it right off your spatula. It should be little itty bitty bite-sized pieces, and that's what we want. Okay? Alright, now comes the next part. I don't know if you can see that. See all that juice there in the bottom? That's just useless fat, okay? We don't need all that. We need a little bit to keep things moist, but we definitely don't need all of that was floating in the bottom of the pot. So now we need to drain it. Alright, to drain your meat, just take the pot straight off the stove, leave the stove on because we're going right back to it. Take your pot, okay, you got your meat in your pot. It's all smoothed out. We don't want that because as soon as we tilt this, everything that's up here is going to come flipping forward and splash oil, and we don't want that. So just very gently shake and or spoon everything into a pile like that, just along the edge of the pot. You want to bring it up to the very edge, but not so far that you spill everything that's in it. And then once it's up on the edge like that, take your spatula. It helps to have a bigger one. Put your spatula right up along the edge of the food. Just like that, right along the edge. That's to hold back the meat. and drain out the oil. Now, if you go too fast with this and you tilt it way forward, then you're gonna lose all the meat and stuff that's in the pot that your spatula can't hold. So you see there's a little bit right here along the edge that my spatula isn't touching, but it's not going anywhere because I barely have the pot tilted. So if I tilt it much farther than this, all that's gonna spill forward. We don't want that. All right, so now it's drained. Shake everything back in and lay it flat because we're gonna put it right back on the stove. We want it to be able to cook evenly. All right, so there's that. Now we get back to cooking. All right, so our meat's drained. It's sizzling, it's hopping, it's delicious, and everything's nice and hot. You can see the stove is raging hot. We have some things to do on the counter now, and we don't want the meat to burn while we're doing that. So what we're gonna do, turn the heat completely off on your stove. Completely off. Take your utensil out, so if it's plastic like mine, which by the way is what you should use on Teflon pans, take your spatula out, set it aside, and just leave your pot there, and the remaining heat as the stove cools off. See, it's not even red anymore, it's cooling off pretty quick. That'll finish, it'll brown it up a little more and finish cooking it while we move on to the next step. So we're gonna move on to the counter, and I'm going to show you what to do with the cheese and the salsa. Now it's going to start turning into a meal, and you're really going to see it come together. Alright, now we need to grab the fake cheese block, take it out of its package, find out it opens on the side here somewhere, and it usually splits apart in 3 pieces. So you just kind of pull, it's kind of like a milk carton, one of those old-fashioned cardboard things. Okay, so. Lovely. Processed. Alright, so take your giant fake cheese, lay it on there. All this is trash. Okay, now the cutting begins. Take the same knife you used before. You should probably wipe off the meat from it, but I don't really bother because it's all going in the same pot. Okay, just right now what you want to do is just cut it into slabs, I guess. Each one needs to be about a ½ an inch to an inch thick, and you just go across the whole loaf here, separate them up. Now, the smaller the pieces, the quicker this will melt, and this does take a little bit to melt. So if you cut a big old piece like from here over, that's going to take like a metric ton of time to melt. So we're going to keep them small-ish. Now when you get to this piece right here where you really don't have enough room to get one way or the other, just lay it down and cut it in half this way. It doesn't really matter, just as long as it gets cut. And since this is on its side, we're going to start with this one. You want to cut it, you want to take these that you already have cut, but we're going to cut it this style. I'm going to show you on this one, then I'll show you on these. You got your little square piece, we cut it in half this way, as you can see. And now just turn it, and now we're going to cut it this way. So now we have cubes, okay? We're going to cube the whole rest of this thing. And an easy, quick way to do it is to just take 5 or 6 pieces at once, stack them up. My cat says hello, by the way. Stack them up so they're not all over the place. We cut it that way. And we cut it that way. Now when you drop these in the pot, you're going to have to separate them a little bit because they tend to kind of do this little thing where they fuse together. Because it is pretty gooey stuff. It's not real cheese, but it's real delicious. Alright, so take your next stack and even it out, and then chop it once this way and once that way. Alright, those are done. Take the last stack here That's my cat again. He's begging for cheese. Okay, stack them all together so you can get them kind of even. Cut them once this way and once that way. All right, so now you have this entire block of cheese all cut up. Obviously that's going to end up in with the meat, but we're actually not going to do this first. We're going to take the salsa and open it up. This is a 16-ounce container. You need the entire container. It doesn't, I mean, you can put in as much or as little salsa as you want, but the more you put in, the heartier of a meal it's going to be. And because this is such a simple meal anyway, the more the better. Make it like a cheese meat soup, not just a dip. I mean, you want everything in there. So you know, after 5 crackers, everybody's full because there's so much good stuff in it. All right, so we're gonna take this. All right, so we're gonna take our salsa, like I just said, and we're gonna dump the entire thing straight into the burger meat, the entire container, juice and all. Now, if you've got just a little bit left over in the container, it's along the sides, an easy way to get that out is to take the steak knife that you've just used on your cheese and your meat, use the flat side, and just scrape it along the inside of the container. It's kind of a makeshift squeegee for when you're too lazy to go find your spatula like I am. So you can just get some of the bitty pieces out. I mean, you paid for it, you might as well use all of it, right? All right, so that's empty, now it's trash. Turn the heat back on to whatever setting you had it on before. So mine's going on high 9 because that's where I cook it at. Alright, so now you've got your burger meat, the stove's coming back on. You got your salsa in there. Take your spatula and stir that puppy up. Just mix everything around so it's nice and even. And here's how you do that. Okay, it's all flat like this, right? Take your spatula, work it in between the food and the side of the pot, and just go around it, trace all the way around it, and you'll end up with a big bunch of food on it. Just flip it over like you did when we were cooking the meat. Very easy. Do it again. You start at the very edge of the pot, and then you circle it around, and you'll end up with a bunch of food right there on the edge, and you just flip it over. And you keep doing that, and then you can do this too. Just do your back and forth. You push it one way, flip it up, and then drag it back. Push it up, flip it, and drag it back. You see how that works? Push it up, let it slide off the spatula into a pile, and then drag the pile back. All right? Scrape all the food off the sides, because anything that gets left on the sides here is just gonna burn and start to stink, and it won't be edible. So make sure everything you're cooking stays in the main part. All right, so now we've got our salsa and our burger meat mixed together, and it's looking tasty. We're gonna let that cook for just like a minute or two, just so the salsa flavors can soak into the meat and have it taste real good. And while that's going, we're gonna get started with the garlic, because that's another good thing to have soak into the meat. So this is a brand new jar, and I'm gonna show you my favorite way to open jars because I think it's hilarious. Well, okay, not hilarious. It was hilarious when I was 10 and I first discovered it, but now it's just helpful. So, brand new jar, never been opened, seal's not popped. I'm not gonna fight with this thing. I hate opening jars. So I'm gonna take it right here. I'm gonna put the lid right on the counter, and brace yourself, it's gonna be loud. Just give it one good whack, and it'll dent the side. It'll dent the side right here and open the seal. And like, seriously, that's all it takes. All right, now your meat and your salsa should be bubbling. It should be smelling fantastic. I'm not really a fan of using measurements. I'm kind of bad about that, but I've gotten so much practice over the years that I've learned how much to use. But for your sake, I'm going to use a spoon this time to show you how much. When I like garlic, so if you're going to be cooking with me, you need to either do it my way or determine how much garlic you can stand. I take a heaping spoonful and just throw it straight in, and maybe a little bit of juice. Alright, so now we've got some garlic and some juice in there. Knock off your spoon. Put the lid back on the garlic and put it away because we're done with it. Take your spatula and stir in the garlic just the way I've been showing you. Take the garlic and stir it in so it doesn't, so what we're cooking doesn't burn on the bottom since we're busy playing with jars of garlic. Boy, this smells good. All right, so now you've got your garlic, your salsa, and your meat all mixed together. It should be really starting to look like food now. We have some more spices to put in, but because this cheese sticks takes so long, first thing we're going to do is dump in the cheese we just cut up. So you want to take the whole stack and peel it apart, and just like we did when you were throwing in the burger meat, pull it into little pieces. And if you get big chunks like this, just break them up, it doesn't matter. And throw them in. Every last bit of that cheese brick goes in here. Now when you throw them in, make sure you don't throw them straight into a puddle of liquid because it's going to bounce back up and burn you. So either drop them gently or throw them like a boss, whatever, it doesn't matter, just get it in there. Obviously after a while it's going to start to pile up whether you can help it or not, but in the beginning try to space it out because the ones that are piled on top of each other, obviously the ones on top aren't going to cook as fast. So fill out all the empty spaces, cover up your meat entirely. That's what she said. And then just once you're out of that, just start throwing it in. Now obviously time is of the essence here. You can't exactly leave this cooking and halfway done and go take a phone call. I mean, once you're started with this, you gotta keep going. And if you do have an emergency or you have to stop for some reason, turn off the stove and take the pot off the heat. Because right now we don't want it cooking while we're busy, because this cheese burns really easy. So if you gotta move away from the stove, take this off the heat, turn your stove off, go do your thing, and when you come back, just reheat it and keep going. I'm kind of famous for dropping things, so don't be surprised when you're cooking with me if I drop half of what's supposed to go in the pot. That's okay, my cats appreciate it. Alright, so there's all the cheese in there. Now what we put on first is already starting to melt, so even though these aren't melted, we've got to start stirring now because everything on the very bottom is going to sink and start to burn. So just like before, here's what we're going to do. We're going to go on the very edge, get your spatula between the food and the wall of the pot, and now it's getting juicy so you can't tilt it as much. You got to be real careful and watch right here so that you don't spill all your juice onto the stove and start a fire. Alright, so you got to just find a happy balance and tilt it. So get your spatula under everything and just flat out turn it over. That's all you got to do, okay? So get your spatula in between the wall of the pot and the food, go around the edge, get your spatula under there, and just turn it over. Go around the edge, get your spatula under there, and turn it over. Alright, so what you're cooking should look like this right now. It's kind of juicy. That's okay. Shake off your spatula so we don't get cheese all over everything. Just give it a few quick taps. I mean, you don't really want to bang it because you'll splash cheese everywhere. But just shake off some of the big chunks. And set that aside. Alright, so now that's cooking. It's doing a good job. Cheese is melting. We'll go back and stir it again in a minute. Now we start adding spices. Now again, I don't measure. Normally I'll show you with the pepper what I usually do. I just, see when I get these, I take the little strainer straight off. I just rip it off and throw it away because I don't use them. This is how I normally do it. I just go in a zigzag motion across and then back up if I want more. So that's what it usually looks like when I add spices. I'd say that was about a spoonful to a half a spoonful. It's to taste. Everything from now on you add as much or as little as you want. But like I said, because I'm doing a tutorial here, I'll be good and use a spoon. So we're gonna do, that was pepper, we're gonna use the cumin seed next. If you spill some out of the spoon and it ends up in the pot, don't worry about it. I don't deal in exact recipes. What I make is random, and every recipe is a little bit different. Every time I make something, it comes out a little bit different. All right, so there's your spoonful of cumin seed. Obviously, just dump it in there. Don't worry about stirring it yet. We got a lot more to add. We'll stir it when it's done. Okay, next is the ground red pepper. This is really spicy. It doesn't have a taste so much as it does just kind of just add a kick to the food. So here I go again. See, I was about to spray it in there. All right. You really don't need much of this, otherwise this is going to be too painful to eat. So that's about all I use, okay? If you want your food spicy, don't worry about that. Okay, now we've added half our spices, but this is still cooking, so we need to stir it again so that the stuff on the bottom doesn't burn. All right, yep, it's already starting to burn on the bottom. You'll know if it's burning on the bottom because it'll get, your spatula will get caught when you try to stir. All right, so kind of just break up everything we just threw on top there. Stir it around. Now at this point you got to be real gentle with it, because if you stir it too fast you're going to splash boiling hot cheese on yourself. Alright, so as I was showing you how to do the spices, it burned on the bottom a little bit, and I'm going to show you how to deal with that. You can't see it obviously, but I can feel there's just a little film of resistance. That would be burned cheese. What you're going to do, you're going to take your spatula like this. You want it upside down. Put it against the burned food and just scrape it off. Just like a paint scraper. Never pull it towards you to scrape like this. Don't ever do that, because if it gets stuck and then releases, it's going to splash forward with a wave of hot cheese. So you always want to go away from yourself. Put it at an angle, catch it on the burned food, and push it forward. And push it forward. You'll start to feel the resistance on the bottom of the pot let up. And that's because you're freeing up the bottom of the pot to the heat once more. Alright, so I got that unburned, it's boiling. I'm going to turn the heat down a little bit, and if you're at the same spot you might want to do the same. I'm turning mine down to about halfway so that it's just barely cooking. We're almost done, so all the cheese is all melted. I turned the heat down. Now it's just going to kind of simmer in its own heat while we finish, because we don't really need it to cook anything else. Alright, so we've done half our spices. Now we get the chili powder, and this is, oops. This adds a really unique taste to it, so I like to use a lot. Full heaping spoonful, right in. Okay, and now, those are my dogs in the background, by the way, they're wrestling. We're going to use the garlic powder. We already used the minced garlic, but like I said, I like garlic. So this is optional, but I'm going to use a almost full-ish spoonful of garlic right in there. Now, I'm not going to bother with the Tabasco sauce right now, but there you have it. Mix that up like we have been. Now, an easy way to mix up spices when it's like this, instead of just stirring around and around, if you've got a spatula that has these open holes in it, just put it straight over what you're trying to mix and just push down, and then do it again and push down. And this also go through the holes. It's kind of like a mixer. It's helpful. But don't do it real fast because it'll splash up and again you'll get burned. So stir it around some and then mix it some. And I promise my dogs are just playing. They're not really as evil as they sound. Okay, so we've got a lovely dip going here. Believe it or not, we are almost done. The very last thing we need to do is add a bit of taco seasoning. Get your packet of taco seasoning. Now on the back for making real tacos, it says to add water and shredded tomato, or shredded lettuce, tomatoes, all that crap. Don't worry about that. Just open the packet, take the seasoning, and dump it in. Okay, that's trash. Now, this is the last thing. Stir it in, do it real good, make sure you don't end up with any petrified lumps of powder. Get all along the edges. You can kind of see, I'm not sure if you'll be able to tell on the video or not, but right here in my sauce it's darker, and right along the edge here it's much lighter. That means I haven't mixed everything in all the way. So an easy way to do that is just to scrape along the sides, and kind of, with sauces like this, you got to kind of scrape along the sides and then pick up whatever's stuck to the spatula and dump it in the middle. And if it's still burning a little bit on the bottom, remember to do your little paint scrape move on the bottom so you can free up the heat. And whatever you scrape up will kind of re-melt into the food and you won't end up with burned chunks. All right. So after everything's mixed up, you should end up with a nice chunky orangish yellow cheese dip with your salsa and all your tasty foods and spices. Remember to scrape everything off the edges so it doesn't turn into petrified flakes of food. And believe it or not, we're done. Thanks for joining me on Clueless Cuisine, the first episode. I hope you enjoy what you made. I hope you're proud of yourself. And bon appetit. Don't forget to give it a like and subscribe for more. See ya.